Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to ICICI Lombard General Insurance Limited's Q2 and H1 FY21 earnings conference call. From the senior management, we have with us today Mr. Bhargav Dasgupta, MD and CEO of the company, Mr. Gopal Balachandran, CFO and CRO, Mr. Sanjeev Mantri, Executive Director, Retail, and Mr. Alok Agarwal, Executive Director, Wholesale. As a reminder, all participant lines will be in the listen-only mode, and there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions after the presentation concludes. Should you need assistance during the call, please signal an operator by pressing star then 0 on your touchtone phone. Please note that this conference is being recorded. I now hand the conference over to Mr. Bhargav Dasgupta. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Thank you, Raymond. Good evening to each one of you. Thank you for joining the earnings conference call of ICICI Lombard for Q2 FY21 and H1 2021. I hope you and all your colleagues are safe and healthy. So what I'll do is I'll give you a brief overview of the industry trends and developments that we've witnessed in the last few months. Post this, our CFO, Mr. Gopal Balachandran, will share the financial performance of the company. If you look at the macro environment in the last couple of quarters, post the sharp correction in the economy in Q1, economic activity has started to pick up with high-frequency indicators such as electricity generation, FASTag toll collections, e-way bills, air freight, export, and motor vehicle registrations touching pre-COVID levels towards the end of Q2. In addition to the normalization in economic activity, pent-up demand and restocking may have led to this kind of improvement. So we have to wait and see if this sustains post the festive season. There are many headwinds to reaching a level of meaningful growth for the economy, such as the risk of resurgence of COVID cases, yet disrupted supply chains, aggregate customer demand, and the large contraction still seen in certain specific sectors. The GI industry has been able to navigate the current macro environment better, with industry GDPI in the recent months moving closer to pre-COVID levels. Segments such as motor insurance have shown signs of recovery driven by improving rural sentiment and growing need for personal mobility and safety concerns. Health insurance continues to register robust growth given the regulatory tailwinds and heightened awareness about the need for protection. As far as the commercial lines are concerned, the fire segment continued to show robust growth, aided by rate hike that came into force on 1st January of this year, while marine and engineering lines witnessed degrowth. At ICICI Lombard, we remain confident that the industry will continue to outperform in terms of growth, given the low insurance penetration, urbanization of population, and now increasingly enhanced risk awareness. Speaking of the performance of the industry, as per the GI Council report, the GI industry registered a growth of 1.4% for H1 2021 over H1 20, with the industry GDPI moving to 968.32 billion in H1 21 from 951.28 billion in H1 2020. Excluding the crop segment, this growth would have been a 2.8%. For the quarter, the overall growth and growth excluding crop segment was 5.6% and 9.2% respectively. The combined ratio of the industry was 104.4% in Q1 2021 as compared to 113.1% in Q1 2020, based on available information from public disclosures, excluding two companies which haven't disclosed their numbers as yet. Further, the overall combined ratio for private multi-line general insurers was about 103.0 in Q1 2021 as compared to 107.7 in Q1 2020. As I've mentioned earlier, the regulator has proactively announced several noteworthy measures, including relaxations and regulations promoting ease of doing business, particularly in terms of the digital agenda. During the quarter on September 4th, the authority also issued guidelines on wellness and preventive features, wherein insurers may offer reward points to customers meeting set criteria. These features can be offered as an add-on or optional cover. This will enable insurers to endeavor to promote wellness offerings like discounts on increase in sum insured, discounts on OPD services, redeemable voucher on health supplements or gym memberships, etc. This is also expected to expand the scope for the insurers providing wellness and value-added offerings to their customers. Let me now turn to the claims behavior observed in the recent months. The motor OD claim frequency has been gradually increasing since the lifting of the lockdown and has now reached almost pre-COVID levels. Similarly, in case of health, claim frequency has seen a surge in elective surgeries as they are resuming, though it continues to remain below pre-COVID levels. The spike in COVID cases reported across the country had seen elevated levels in end of September, and since then we have seen a slight moderation. For the overall industry, COVID claims reported as on 30th September 2020 was 3.24 lakhs, of which 17,000 COVID claims were reported with ICICI Lombard. The elevated levels in COVID cases remain a cause for concern for the whole industry and may have an adverse impact on the loss ratios of the health insurance portfolio this year, particularly if the upcoming festive season gatherings lead to a second wave of COVID claims. We expect that this increase would be only partially offset by the reduced number of non-COVID claims on the health side. However, given the strength of a well-diversified product mix and disciplined underwriting, we believe that at ICICI Lombard, we are reasonably placed as far as our overall claims cost for the year is concerned. In current times, the other major trend is the significant increase in adoption of digital solutions by consumers. At ICICI Lombard, we have been continuously investing on this front for the last 15 years. In the previous earnings call, we had shared with you some of our efforts towards getting more customers, channel partners, and other stakeholders to avail our digital platforms. We continue with this drive in the quarter under review. Over 97.5% of the policies issued by us in the first half of this year were sourced through these digital solutions, where we did not see paper. With regard to claim settlement, 63.1% of our motor OD claims were serviced through live video streaming app InstaSpect in September 2020, up from 24.5% in March 2020. This feature does away with the need for physically serving a damaged vehicle, allowing real-time claim settlement and approval. We continue to invest in new technologies on the digital front, including AI and ML that help in policy issuance, claims, fraud control, and servicing. Our automated AI solution processed 3 times the motor break-in self-inspections in September as compared to March 2020. On the health insurance front, under group health policies, 60.9% of the fresh cashless requests were authorized by our AI ML engage solution, that as compared to 31% in March 2020. Tele underwriting has become an important tool during this pandemic, and 15% of our medical tele underwriting were processed straight through using a voice-enabled AI and NLP solution. Our mobile app, I'll Take Care, which has features such as Hello Doctor, chat with experts, emergency medical assessment, and health risk assessment, has crossed 2 lakh downloads, enabling more and more customers to avail our insurance and wellness solutions at their fingertips. We continue to add digital capabilities in servicing, including process of endorsements. Since its launch last year, 60% of all group health endorsements are now done digitally, reducing processing time from weeks to minutes. And 24% of our motor policy endorsements from the agency channel are processed real-time using our digital solutions. One of our beliefs has been that slowdowns are the best time to invest for the long term. During recent months, despite the challenging economic environment, we have made significant investments in improving our digital and people capabilities. We have also accelerated our digital engagement initiatives for employees that focuses on all-round well-being. We believe technology-led innovation coupled with dynamic workforce will lead to a benefiting us in the long term and us to capture the opportunity that the sector offers. Our endeavor comes from our long-standing customer relationships that we've been able to sustain even through this pandemic. We are constantly evolving our strategies to further consolidate our position in the non-life insurance segment. We continue to remain focused on creating long-term value for our stakeholders through prudent risk selection and sustained profitability. I will now ask Gopal to take you through the financial numbers for the recently concluded quarter.
Thanks, Bhargav, and good evening to each one of you. I will now give you a brief overview of the financial performance of the company for Q2 and H1 2021. We have put up the results presentation on our website. You can access it as we walk you through the performance numbers. The GDPI of the company stood at 64.91 billion in H1 2021 as compared to 64.4 billion in H1 2020, a growth of 0.8% compared to industry growth of 1.4%. Excluding the crop segment, GDPI increased to 64.59 billion in this first half as compared to 63.86 billion in H1 2020, registering a growth of 1.1% compared to the industry growth of 2.8%. On a quarterly basis, the GDPI grew by 8% over quarter 2 last year compared to the industry growth of 5.6%. If you were to exclude the crop segment, the GDPI growth for quarter 2 2021 was 9.9% over quarter 2 2020 for us, as compared to the industry growth of 9.2% for the same period. Our focus on preferred segments primarily drove our GDPI growth. Consequent to the increase in minimum prescribed rates for certain occupancies under fire segment, this portfolio registered a robust GDPI growth of 47.6% in H1 2021, thereby catalyzing the GDPI growth of our property and casualty segment. As indicated in our results presentation, the overall property and casualty segment grew by 20.5% for H1 2021 over H1 2020. On the retail side of the business, SME and agency channel and health indemnity continued to grow faster and remain our areas of focus. Motor segment that saw negative growth in the last quarter registered a growth of 9.4% in quarter 2 2021. To harness the potential of the segments, we have been expanding our distribution network to increase penetration in Tier 3 and Tier 4 cities. Our agents, including the point of sale distribution, increased to 52,785 as on September 30, 2020 from 49,802 as on June 30, 2020. During the quarter, we also announced entering into a bancassurance tie-up with Yes Bank. The advance premium numbers was 31.60 billion as at September 30, 2020, which is up from 30.31 billion as on June 30, 2020. During the quarter, we announced entering into a scheme of arrangement with Bharti AXA to acquire the non-life insurance business. In relation to the scheme, the expenses incurred of about 0.31 billion have been charged in the P&L during quarter 2 and H1 2021. We are excited and looking forward for realization of the long-term business potential that this scheme entails. Our combined ratio stood at 99.8% in H1 2021 compared to 101.5 in H1 2020, despite the cyclone and flood losses. Excluding the impact of cyclone and flood losses of 0.77 billion, the combined ratio stood at 98.2% in H1 2021, as against 100.1% in H1 2020, excluding the impact of cyclone and flood losses of 0.61 billion. Combined ratio stood at 99.7% in Q2 FY 2021 compared to 102.6% in Q2 FY 2020. Here again, excluding the impact of cyclone and flood losses, which was 0.46 billion for this quarter 2, the combined ratio stood at 97.9% as against 100.7% in Q2 FY 2020, again excluding the impact of cyclone and flood losses, which was 0.45 billion. Our investment assets rose to 291.62 billion at September 30, 2020, as compared to 281.18 billion at June 30, 2020. Our investment leverage net of borrowings was 4.13 at September 30 this year, as compared to 4.23 at June 30, 2020. Investment income increased to 10.91 billion in this first half, as compared to 10.14 billion in first half of last year. On a quarterly basis, investment income increased to 5.92 billion in quarter 2 this year, as compared to 4.87 billion in quarter 2 last financial year. Our capital gains was 1.84 billion in H1 2021, as compared to 2.07 billion in H1 2020. Capital gains in quarter 2 2021 was 1.24 billion, as compared to 0.69 billion in quarter 2 FY 2020. Our profit before tax grew by 15.9% to 10.86 billion in H1 2021, as compared to 9.36 billion in H1 2020. Whereas PBT grew by 20.3% to 5.55 billion in Q2 FY21, as compared to 4.61 billion in Q2 FY 2020. Consequently, profit after tax grew by 31.7% to 8.14 billion in H1 2021, as compared to 6.18 billion in H1 2020. Whereas profit after tax grew by 35% to 4.16 billion in Q2 FY 2021, as compared to 3.08 billion in Q2 FY 2020, primarily due to the lower effective tax rate of 25.03%. Return on average equity was 24.9% in H1 2021, as compared to 22.3% in H1 2020. The ROE for Q2 2021 was 24.7%, as compared to 22% in Q2 FY 2020. Solvency ratio was healthy at 2.74 times at September 30, 2020, as against 2.5 times at June 30, 2020, continued to be higher than the minimum regulatory requirement of 1.5 times. As I conclude, I would like to reiterate that we ended Q2 and H1 2021 with healthy financials. As a company, we are evolving our strategies with an overarching objective of creating long-term value for all our stakeholders. Whether it is initiatives towards enhancing technology capabilities or attracting talented employees, ICICI Lombard has always strived to be at the forefront of investing in sustainable ways of doing business and would continue to do so. While we are excited by the opportunity and the long-term growth potential that the sector offers, we continue to remain focused on building our business model based on strong pillars of customer excellence, multi-channel distribution, prudent risk management, technology prowess, and capital conservation. I would like to thank you for attending this earnings conference call, and we would be happy to take any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask questions may press star and 1 on their touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and 2. Participants are requested to use handsets while asking questions. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. To ask a question, please press star and 1. Participants who wish to ask questions may press star and 1 on the touchtone telephone. We take the first question from the line of Harshit Toshniwal from Premji Invest. Please go ahead.
Hi, thanks for the opportunity. 2 questions, sir. Firstly, on the health COVID claims. Now, so I think you said there are 17,000 cases of around 354,000 cases. And so even if we put an average ticket size of around 1 lakh, then will that be a right way to assume that? And in that case, how much would be the overall COVID claims which you have seen in Q2 and your expectation of what further loss ratio can we see in the health segment? And the second question is with respect to TP losses. So Q2 it has come down to around 16%. Over there, can you explain a bit what led to that reserving release in this quarter specifically?
So on COVID, the total numbers that we gave, Harshit, is inclusive of the indemnity claims and the benefit claims. If you remember, we had talked about the fact that we had, even before the regulator had mandated, we had launched a low-ticket, small sum insured in benefit policy also. So the average ACS for us will be lower, but the exact number in terms of the total claims number, I'll ask Gopal to give you. In terms of the trend that we see, as I explained, our sense is that the September number was potentially the peak. I mean, the incremental data that we are seeing in this month based on cashless claims, we are seeing some moderation. If that trend continues and in a sense, September remains a peak, then in aggregate, the health loss ratio numbers should be, reasonable. We have had some savings in the first half in terms of non-COVID claims that would largely compensate. The concern remains, which is very, difficult to predict. Concern remains that if there is a second spike, which we've seen in other countries or as also, driven by festivities here, and that number is high, that could be a bit of a concern. But I think, as I mentioned right at the beginning, I think overall, when we look at our overall portfolio, motor and, other corporate lines and health, I think at ICICI Lombard, we are reasonably confident about our claims cost not, crossing, the loss ratios of last year. If you remember, one of the things that we had talked about in the first quarter also was that there is a benefit that we are seeing in terms of incidence rates being lower, and it wouldn't be appropriate to factor all of that benefit upfront, which one could have, but we said we want to wait for the picture to play through for the whole year, and we will spread this benefit over the years, which is what gives us a comfort that we are, adequately cushioned in terms of our aggregate claims cost for the year. in terms of the specific numbers, I'll ask Gopal to give you the details.
Yeah. So just one thing, so the way I was looking at, if it's 17,000 claims and even if I 60-70,000 ticket size, a gross number comes out to around 120-130 crore for COVID claims. Just want to understand that in the quarter, have we, beyond that 120-130 crore of COVID claims, have we provided for the coming period?
So Gopal, you want to answer that? I mean,
Yes.
As I said, there are two things that we have to look at. When we look at the total health claims, there is the COVID numbers which we talked about, but there is a non-COVID claims also. We are watching the frequency, and at least even in Q2 there has been some savings. So on balance, we are quite fine for this quarter. And as I said, the benefit of first quarter, we did not feel that it was appropriate to take that full benefit. In a sense, you can call it a kind of a quasi-reserve that we created, which should help us in this period.
So Arshit, if you remember, I think in the quarter one, I think when the similar thing was asked in terms of how many cases did we get and what was the value corresponding to that, I think we had kind of indicated that we received in quarter one roughly about 1,300 and odd cases, and the value concerned was close to about 18 to 20 crores. This number, when you look at it for the half year, as Bhargav said, the total number of claims that has been reported to us is about roughly about 17,000 cases. And the amount corresponding to that is about 115 crores. So in terms of how do we go about the estimation of the loss reserves, obviously I think we always factor in for any kind of prudence that we have to build in as a part of our loss ratio assumptions, particularly because there is always a possibility of, let's say, some lag in reporting that could happen insofar as customers is concerned. That's one. And secondly, I think in terms of the approach that we have taken on building for loss ratios, we have always tried to be a little conservative, keeping in mind the fact that there could be an increase in incidences, which is where even in quarter one, we had kind of, while there were benefits in the form of a reduction in claim frequency that we had experienced, but the fact that there could be developments in the subsequent quarters, we kind of stayed put with where we are. So hence, it's not just that we would have kind of factored in about 115 crores as a part of our numbers for the half year. We would obviously kind of look at what has been, let's say, the kind of some kind of delayed intimations. So that's something that gets built in. And some level of prudence also is built in as a part of our loss ratio assumptions.
Correct. So basically in this, so maybe of H2, if it is in similar run rate, then of the 250-300 crores, we might see some of it has already been provided.
So the key thing, Arshit, is I think what we will have to look for is, I think we will have to file, as we all see the numbers, clearly maybe early trends for the month of October seems to be kind of indicating maybe some reduction in number of cases. But honestly, I think we would want to wait and see how the development happens post the festive season. And to be honest, the increase in the number of cases that one has seen, particularly in quarter two, we would not have necessarily anticipated to that extent. And hence, we would obviously want to wait and see for the next half in terms of if at all there is a possibility of a second wave of COVID cases, as what we had indicated even in the opening comments. And then we will to that extent calibrate the extent of loss ratio assumptions that we have to take.
Perfect. And so lastly on the motor ratio, so the impact number.
Yeah. So I didn't answer that part. So basically on TP, as you know, our standard practices when we, again, part of our philosophy of being conservative, this is a very typical best practice of good insurance companies globally. When we reserve, we look at, in a sense, very conservative reserving, and only when the data comes through with lag do we release reserves whenever we think we have a confidence that the reserve is releasable. And we do this every quarter with our actual team. And and this quarter there has been some TP reserve releases, but it's not very large. And we think that overall our kind of overall benefit that we have, we still continue with the same practice of being conservative about the new book that we are writing.
Thank you. Before we take the next question, we'd like to inform participants that in order that the management is able to address questions from all participants in the conference, please limit your questions to 2 per participant. Should you have follow-up questions, we request you to rejoin the queue. We take the next question from the line of Mr. Sanket Godha from Spark Capital. Please go ahead.
Thanks for the opportunity. So again, my question is on motor third party because one of your competitors who announced the result, their view is that given tribunals are not working, the interest component for the severity will substantially increase till the courts opens and give the rewards to the claimants. So to factor in that risk, they have started providing little higher than they usually used to provide. But when we look our numbers, that could be a possible case for us also. So in that sense, the TP loss ratio at 62% in the current quarter, or for 1H around 66% looks very very impressive. So just wanted to understand, is it because the frequency has come off? That's why we are taking that benefit, or is it because of some bit of Motor Vehicle Act benefit because it has completed 1 year, we have factored some bit of benefit, or given we have now sell long-term TP plans and the frequency naturally comes off because of the higher denominator base that is getting reflected into the numbers. Just wanted to understand the little more granularity on motor TP loss ratio and trends going ahead.
Okay, you have another one, Sanjay?
I have one more question on health. Last time you gave the breakup of, it's a data keeping. So last time you gave the breakup of total health around 800 crores, what you did in current quarter and 600 in the half, broken down into pure indemnity and retail indemnity and the benefit based.
So the second one I'll ask Gopal to answer, but let me address the first question. I really can't comment on what others are doing, but our practice, and we've always been saying that there are some companies which are possibly taking a very aggressive reserving call when they're disclosing their numbers on the TP side. Our approach has been just the opposite. We've always been very conservative, as I explained right at the beginning, in terms of when we reserve, we create a reserve for potential adverse deviation, and that's good practice that I think insurance companies should have. In this quarter, there is no change in our philosophy. We are not taking any benefit of something that we can't quantify or estimate. We will watch that play through. And as we also explained at the beginning of the year itself, we said that we should not take the full benefit of the either OD or TP claims because of the frequency losses, because we don't know what will happen in the second half. So whatever releases that has happened in this quarter is largely because of the data that we see over years, over the period of the back book. So it could be because of maybe overall frequency losses in general in the system, not because of just the last one or two quarters, or because of maybe less accidents, or because of the conservativeness that we have in terms of reserving. As I explained, the principle of being conservative for the future remains consistent. So if you see, our TP loss ratios in the past were significantly higher than some of the competitors that we are probably studying. And maybe we are benefiting from that today, while for others it may not be the case.
Okay. Just on the breakdown of numbers, Sanket, on the investor deck, you would have seen the total premiums that we would have given for health, PA, and travel put together, which was roughly, I'm giving you numbers for the half year, which was roughly about 16.88 billion. What we had seen for first half of last year, and the first half of this year, that number was about 15.94. If I were to split that, within that, health is about 13.44 billion for first half of last year, and 14.26 billion insofar as first half of the current year is concerned. That includes both the employer-employee, or let's say the corporate health, and it also includes the retail health component as well. Within the health breakdown, the overall retail health numbers that we have within that 13.44 and 14.26. Retail health for us, which is again a combination of both indemnity and benefit put together, for the first half last year is 7.29 billion, and first half of this year is about 5.97 billion. The breakup of which for indemnity is 3.27 billion is the number for first half last year, and 4.28 billion is the numbers for the first half of the current year. The balance amount pertains to the benefit component, which was roughly about 4.02 billion in first half of last year, as compared to 1.7 billion for first half of the current year.
So effectively on the indemnity side, retail indemnity side, we have roughly about 30.9% growth, or 30.9% growth. And for benefit, we have a degrowth because these are usually attachment policies that we sell with NBFCs, HFCs, and banker.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. That's it from my side.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Deepak Sonwane from Haitong Securities. Please go ahead.
Hello, sir.
Hi.
Yeah, my question is regarding health segment. Recently, as we know, IRDA has mandated insurers to not enter into category bearing treaties. We just wanted to know whether reinsurance contracts that our company does regarding benefit products with reinsurers, does that policies are in category bearing nature or not?
Sorry, I couldn't hear the question clearly. Gopal, if you heard it, could you answer?
Sorry, Deepak, I think it's the same thing at my end. If you can just repeat the question, I can respond to that appropriately.
Sure. Hello, am I audible?
Yeah, just go ahead, Deepak.
Yeah. So as we know, IRDA has mandated reinsurers to not enter into any capital gearing treaties with insurers.
Yes.
So just wanted to know whether the benefit products that our company cede with reinsurers, are those policies or those ceded policies are capital gearing nature or not?
So Deepak, I think this was also asked to us because the circular had come somewhere towards the end of the last year, wherein IRDA had said exactly the point that you rightly mentioned. I think we have done an assessment of all the arrangements that we have had, and there is no such arrangement which should qualify as a capital gearing arrangement. All our reinsurance treaties that we have entered into meets the test of risk transfer and do not fall within the criteria of capital gearing as is put out by the regulator.
All right. So my follow-up question was regarding the same health segment. So for health insurance segment, our company, as we know that unestablished users, if we see that our unestablished users as a percentage of NWP is quite high, around like 70% above over the years, as compared to the peers, which is at a level of 45 to 50%. So can you please provide a granularity or a reasoning for this?
So honestly, Deepak, unexpired risk reserve is purely a function of the policies that you would have underwritten through the year. Generally, let's say for companies like us, where relatively a large part of our premiums comes through motor and health segments, and equally we do get premiums from the corporate lines as well. But in general, if you look at the overall mix, motor and health put together roughly constitutes close to about 70% of the overall mix of premiums that we write. And as we all know, generally motor, specifically we get to see a large part of the premiums being sourced during the festive seasons, which is the later half of the year. And even retail health, to that extent, also gets sourced to a large extent towards the quarter 4 of the financial period. Commercial lines would obviously have a risk start date which is more towards the beginning of quarter 1. So hence, to the extent that you are able to have growth as what we have seen in the past, which is significantly driven by growth in H2 of any particular financial period, to that extent, obviously the earnings that would have happened with respect to those premiums will be only for, let's say, a period of 3 to 4 months, assuming that you have evenly returned the business in H2 of that year. And the remaining premiums will get earned in the subsequent period. So hence, to that extent, which is why you find, let's say, the URR as a percentage of the NWP is what it is. I think from our standpoint, I think the way we look at monitoring ourselves in terms of performance is more as to what is the overall combined ratios that we operate with, which factors in elements of URR in the form of earned premiums, and correspondingly what has been the claim experience and expenses that we have incurred. So that's what we typically look at. But to answer your point, it's purely a function of how your policies have been underwritten through the year.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Shantanu Chakravarti from Edelweiss Securities. Please go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity and congratulations to management for putting out a strong set of numbers. I have two sets of questions. First, relate to the medical indemnity business, where for this quarter you have posted 40% plus growth. What I would really appreciate is if you guys could give me some color on what has led to this growth in terms of one, is it agent ads? That is, are you seeing the per agent selling increase, both in terms of volume or how much of this is pricing? And secondly, if you could give some color on whether there's an overall demand tailwind which the whole sector seems to be riding on, and if so, how your market share is developing, and what could be the full year number. That basically some granular information and insights around medical indemnity would be very useful. And the second question relates to your SME lines, where growth seems to be quite robust, and it's a distribution channel that you have been investing in for a period. How are you seeing PSU competition shaping up there? And how much of it is market creation? How much of it is market share transfer for you, if you could give some color?
Thanks, Shantanu. Let me start with the second question first. And on the health, I'll cover maybe at an overview level, and I'll ask Sanjeev to give you more granular details. On the SME side, it's probably very difficult to exactly identify how much is market share gain and how much is new to industry numbers. But obviously, a large part of it is market share gain. And that is visible in terms of the segment by segment. I mean, when I talk about segment by segment, I look at product segment. If you look at fire, engineering, marine, liability, every segment we are gaining market share. And that's driven by large corporate as also SME. But what we are also doing is with the SME agency, I mean, that's largely an agency and small broker-driven business. There is a lot of work that we do in terms of giving, handholding them with new categories of products. So, for example, liability is not something that is very, commonly sold for a certain category of corporates. I mean, and there we do a lot of work with our agents to, build their knowledge and capability. So what they bring in thereafter is possibly new to industry. But my guess is that a large part of the business growth that we are seeing is largely market share shift that is happening, driven largely by the entire investment that we've made in terms of digital servicing and claim servicing. Just to give you a couple of points, as I mentioned, almost 88% of our policies on the SME side we do without paper, as in completely digital. We've done stuff like on health endorsements, which for the industry is a lot of physical effort for GHI policies. We've kind of again digitized and automated that process, and almost 60% of the policies now we are seeing it done through that process. So there's a lot of effort that we've put in terms of streamlining processes for the distribution, and on the claim service and the risk management service that we provide to our customers. That's been the other factor why market share is shifting. Coming to your question on health, as you know, we've been investing both in terms of product, process, as also in terms of the distribution addition that we have done. And Gopal talked about the number of agents that we've added in this quarter, but for the year, I mean, these are all POS agents because licensing examination is stuck. Most of them are coming in as POS agents, but finally they are really agents only. And so there's a distribution rollout that is happening. There is an investment that we are making, and there is an incremental business that agents are getting because of the tailwind that you talked about. In terms of actual further details, I'll ask Sanjeev to share whatever he wants to add.
No, I think pretty much covered. Just a quick update. There's clearly a decent tailwind. Even if you look at the industry number, as you rightly mentioned, there's a decent growth which can be witnessed. There are typically two, sorts of companies which are operating. One is the multi-line, another is the only standalone health companies. Both of them have seen significant growth. For us, the key driver has been, which we have been telling the investors over the last couple of years, we've been building our agency network. Another key element that has helped us in the growth is the activation of the agents, making them active on ground. Another thing which worked in our favor in a way which even Bhargav has covered is the fact that we've been sourcing all our policies for some time back on the digital mode, and the current scenario has kind of helped our agents to actually close out on a low-touch basis digitally, which has also worked in our favor. We also believe that this particular scenario should continue. It's kind of ebbed out. It was at its peak around 4-5 months back. Now it's kind of, but still on the positive side with 25-30% growth, and that should continue to exhibit over next few months, because fear plays a big role, and current pandemic actually has made people believe that buying health insurance is investment rather than an expense. I think that change of mindset will go a long way in terms of overall health insurance and industry doing well, and consequent to that, we keep at ICICI Lombard doing well.
Thanks for the responses, guys. I mean, Sanjeev, if I could just press you on that point. Yeah. I mean, it's probably most of the agents activated over the last 3 to 4 months wouldn't be directly contributing to top line. So would it be fair to say that of, say, the stock added over the last 2 years, in the last 4 or 5 months, their levels of volume generation have gone up significantly? And if there's a pricing component also, then...
Yeah, so contribution from the existing partners who are there on an incremental basis because of the tailwind, definitely that plays a big role. Plus, to get the incremental addition in terms of growth, the new activation straight away hit that bucket technically because they were not contributing in the past. So both of them play a significant role, but if you have to divide that matrix in terms of if we have grown our new book at 40%, probably 65%, 70% of that new book growth would have come from the existing set of agents who are doing more, but there would be a decent contribution of 30-35% coming from new set of active agents also.
Thank you. Before we move to the next question, a reminder to participants to please limit your questions to 2 per participant. Should you have follow-up questions, we request you to rejoin the queue. We take the next question from the line of Nidhesh Jain from Investec Capital. Please go ahead.
Thanks for the opportunity, sir. So 2 questions. One, on the operating expenses side, there is a fair bit of growth on OPEX in this quarter on a YY basis. And then we have seen some reversal of provisions. So if you can just share what has happened there. And secondly, on the motor OD side, we have gained a lot of market share in this quarter. While we understand the pricing is pretty aggressive in the sector. So how do you see this strategy of gaining market share in an environment where pricing is very aggressive by peers?
Yeah, so let me answer the second one, and then I'll ask Gopal to answer the first one. Look, whatever we do in terms of market share, it will never be at the cost of sustainability. So one of the things that we keep doing is doing a lot of granular analysis in terms of new factors to select risk. And some of the experiments that we've been doing over the last couple of years in some of the segments where we were a bit cautious, we've done some more work. So some new opportunities have opened up. Whether it will sustain or not, I think if the aggression continues, maybe we'll slow down a bit. But till now, whatever we've grown is largely because of selection where we like. In fact, even if you see the overall growth, there are a couple of interesting pictures that are emerging. One is the fact that in some of the OEMs where we believe the pricing has reached an unviable level, actually we've cut down. In two-wheelers, in private car, we've actually cut down 2 of the larger OEMs, while elsewhere we've grown. Secondly, the Auto Ninja investment that we did last year, that is really helping us with the renewals. And wherever the dealers we've kind of entered in, the renewal book is doing well. Thirdly, the agency investment and the virtual office investment that we made a couple of years back, or over the last couple of years, that's doing really well. So the older book is also growing for us, where our relative market share was lower. And the VO virtual office, we had almost a 50% growth in this period. So that is also helping enter into markets where we were relatively under-penetrated. So on the OD side, we are reasonably comfortable with the book that we are writing. On the cost, I'll ask Gopal to answer.
Yeah, Nidesh, I think let me just kind of give the macro picture first. I think if you look at, I think the way I'm sure we all look at is what kind of expense ratios have we run when you kind of break down the combined ratio of 99.7% that we reported for quarter 2, or let's say 99.8 for the first half of the year. If you look at the expense ratios, Nidesh, just the OPEX numbers, for quarter 2 last year, the expense ratios were 25.3%. If you look at this quarter 2, it's at 26%. And even if you look at it on a half-year to half-year basis, I think it was 23.9, and it's at about 25.7%. So clearly, I think as growth has started to come back, I think what we also explained last time, there is also an element of a denominator effect that starts to have a bearing insofar as expense ratios are concerned, which is why the quarter 2 will be a far more representation of the expense ratios, which is more or less staying at about 25.3 as compared to 26%. Now within that, I think in line with what we spoke even in quarter 1, if one was to kind of break down, what we had indicated clearly was we would want to continue to make investments in technology. And to that extent, one of the points that Bhargav mentioned, we did have an acquisition of Auto Ninja that came through in quarter 3 last year. That obviously entails an element of a depreciation charge that we have to take month on month. And obviously the benefits is something that will play through over a period of time, which obviously did not find a reference when you look at quarter 2 of last year. So that's one element of expense which is there in quarter 2 this year as compared to quarter 2 of the previous year. Secondly, we are continuing to make investments in various digital initiatives as what we outlined even as a part of our introductory comment, including also making available various digital avenues for even our employees to work with. So the thrust has been on incurring costs with respect to technology and digital initiatives. So to that extent, one has obviously seen an increase in costs with respect to that particular cost item. Having said that, what we had also indicated is we would obviously keep a check on all other elements of cost, whether it is with respect to our infrastructure or other admin related expenses. There, I think one has clearly seen improvement in the overall cost by almost about 10% compared to what you would have seen on a quarter-to-quarter basis. So which is why in the aggregate, it's a mix of both. There are those items of cost which is incrementally there in this quarter, and the fact that we are making some of those continued investments in technology capabilities, which is to some extent balanced by the efficiencies that we have been able to get on the infra and the administrative expenses.
Sure. And sir, on the provision reversal and the other expenses that we have.
So other expenses, Nidesh, if you are referring to expenses other than those relating to insurance business, if that is what you are referring to, which would have seen an increase when you look at over sequential quarters, is that what you are referring to?
Code number.
Yeah, let's explain that, Gopal, in any case.
Yeah, if that is what you're referring to, Nidesh, you will definitely see an increase on expenses other than insurance business, which would have seen a spike in quarter 2 this year as compared to quarter 1 or even, let's say, quarter 2 of last year. That's primarily because one of the points what we indicated as a part of the opening remarks was with respect to the cost of the demerger expenses, which is roughly about 31 crores. That has been taken as a charge to the P&L, and that finds a reference under the line item which is expenses other than those relating to insurance business in the profit and loss statement.
Sure, sure. That's it from my side.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Udit Kariwala from Ambit Capital. Please go ahead.
Thank you, sir. The question I had was, if I, just roughly, take an average claim, in terms of COVID, that amount was roughly around 1.5 to 1.6 lakhs last quarter. But For this quarter, it has, come down more than half to around 68,000. So, what has led to this? Because I remember last quarter you had mentioned, or the management has mentioned, that there is some kind of standardization being talked through. A lot of lobbying is going around that. So, what has gone into this, or is it that the average stays in hospital have gone down? And the second question is, if you could give some color on the solvency, why it has improved. That will be helpful.
So the second one, again, I'll ask Gopal to answer. On the first, it's a mix of all of that. One is the fact that when, as an industry, we've negotiated, rates, not that every hospital has come on board, but in aggregate, there's a lot more sensitivity, and there is, a certain chunk of hospitals who've come on board in terms of agreeing to these package rates. Number two, if you see the mix, in the second half of this year, we have some of those low-ticket benefit policies that we had written, that those claims have come through. So while we've got, some reduction in the rates on the indemnity claims because of both the negotiation as also the fact that less critical, we are seeing less, critical cases. We are seeing releases, people, length of stay is coming down, etc. So there is a benefit on the indemnity side. Plus on a mix side, we've had a larger share of the small ticket benefit, claims also, which is why the average looks much lower. So if you look at in terms of number of cases, we have almost 5% market share. But in terms of number of, in terms of premium or in terms of claims, we are probably about 3% of the industry numbers. It's largely because of a mix of business, larger share of benefit claims, which are small ticket.
Yeah. And on the point, Udit, with respect to the solvency, I think solvency is purely a function of what kind of businesses that you write. And correspondingly, and there you would have seen that even when you look at it on a half-year basis, the growth for us has been at about, let's say, 0.8%. Which obviously, given the COVID situation, it has been a kind of a moderate growth. And hence, that obviously has a direct bearing with respect to your solvency outcome. And the second, obviously, it's a function of your operating performance as well. I think we have been able to sustain the operating performance in terms of, as I said, the combined ratios of around 100%. And that also by itself kind of contributes, and the fact that we have been able to also report a profits of almost about 814 crores for the half year, which equally kind of adds on to the solvency numbers. So it's purely a function of once we will start to see, let's say, incremental levels of growth coming in, then obviously it starts to have a bearing insofar as the solvency is concerned. So that's one. And secondly, I think we did have some amount of let's say, government receivables of the crop business that we had underwritten in 2018-2019, some of which were outstanding, and obviously that does have an impact beyond a particular period in case it remains as receivable. So we have also seen certain collections of premiums that we have received in this first half year. Of course, corresponding to which there has also been a payout. But in terms of the admissibility of certain receivables beyond a particular period, that has come down. So it's a combination of all those three factors in terms of premium, the extent of receivables that will be available as an admissible asset, and the overall improved operating performance.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Suresh Ganapathy from Macquarie. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Thanks. Most of my questions have been answered. Just wanted to double check, your loss rates in the first half, of course, is even lower than what it was in the first quarter on an overall basis. So this is despite higher claims that you have experienced. So, the full year last year number was about 72, 73 odd %. So what you are telling here is that despite the higher claims possibly which could happen in the second half, you are very confident that the full year loss rates for this year would still be kept below FY20 levels, right? Is that the way to look at it?
So we are not giving anything about the exact percentage for the year, but what we are saying is that we were very careful and conservative about the way we treated the frequency drops in the first quarter, and something that we've seen continue for Q2. And that benefit will help us over the full year, because as frequency increases in the second half, we don't see the claims numbers spiking significantly. And that was what we had talked about in the first quarter as well, that we are being careful about estimating the full benefit in the first quarter itself. So we will see that play through. The reason why we don't want to give you a complete guidance is a bit of uncertainty about what happens if the second COVID spike. If we don't, then we have more certainty, but who knows what happens post the festive season.
And, Bhargav, of course, this question was answered in the previous this thing about the lower COVID ticket sizes claims in the second quarter. I think even if there is a spike in cases, we can assume the same proportion. I know it's a very difficult question, but then I'm just trying to understand it a bit better.
Honestly, there's no reason why there should be a significant change.
Yeah.
I mean, the effort to get more hospitals to agree on the package rates, the effort to negotiate, the effort that we are putting in terms of identifying fraudulent claims, etc., will be ongoing. And in fact, this year we launched an upgraded ML-based fraud monitoring solution, and we are seeing some benefit out of that. So there's a lot of effort that we put to contain some of these things. So I guess, unless there's some unpleasant surprise in terms of second spike, we remain reasonably confident about our loss ratio numbers.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Abhishek Saraf from Jefferies India. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for the opportunity. Several of my questions have been answered. If you can just answer a few more. So I see that our loss ratios in fire portfolio have actually risen, despite the fact that we have been taking significant price hike. I understand that some of it could be to the catastrophe claims, but if you can just let me understand better why is it happening that the loss ratios have moved up in fire despite the price hike. Secondly, if you can just give a status update on the Bharti AXA deal, where are we and are we tracking in line with other milestones? So those would be the two questions.
Yeah. So on the first, fire will always be a bit sporadic, because there are two types of claims, the high severity claims as also the frequency claims. On frequency claims, we are seeing significant benefit because of price increase. High severity claims are typically the cat losses are very, large losses that come through. Now, for us, the first half, we had more cat claims because of, in Q1, we had cyclones normally that is reserved for Q2, and Q2 we continue to have flood losses. But on balance, when we kind of look at our numbers and predict the fire portfolio, we believe by the end of the year, we should see some improvement. I'm just caveating that by saying, to the extent that at times in fire it's very difficult to predict because some catastrophe you cannot predict. But otherwise, we are quite satisfied with the trend that we are seeing in our non-severity claims on the fire side. So we are reasonably comfortable over a fire book. In terms of the way the deal is progressing, at this point in time, it is on track. We are awaiting CCI clearance before we can go to the next stage. But we think we are on line, or rather on line with whatever we had assumed in terms of progress. We will know when the CCI comes in about the next steps.
Oh, okay. Thanks a lot. Just one question if I can squeeze in. So I think it was discussed in earlier by somebody as well, but I could not get it. So the 70 crore reversal in provision for diminution in investment, if you can help me understand that, what was it regarding?
Gopal, you want to answer that?
So Abhishek, what happens is, I think this is something that we explained even when we had kind of taken this impairment provision in quarter 4 of the last year. We do have an investment impairment policy which kind of tests stocks for impairment, and basis which, depending on the market movement, we are required to take a charge, and to that extent we make a provision in the books. However, subsequently, as and when, let's say, we would obviously have a view on each stock in terms of at what point of time we would want to take an exit. So in case if the exit of the stock happens, corresponding to that, whatever impairment provisions have been recognized in the past, those would obviously get reversed, and the actual realization will be given effect with respect to either a gain or loss on account of sale of that particular stock. So in this particular half year, we did have, let's say, an impairment on one of our equity stocks, which we had created in the last year, which has been kind of realized, and that's where you see a reversal of the impairment, and correspondingly the actual realization has been given effect in the P&L.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Kamal Verma from Morgan Stanley. Please go ahead.
Yes, sir. I just one question that was on the motor portfolio. So on the commercial vehicle segment part of it, and like Lombard has been traditionally has not been as focused on the commercial vehicle part as much as the private car and two-wheeler part. So what is the reason for that, and how would you how attractive or unattractive is this segment versus private car and two-wheelers in terms of competition, pricing, loss ratios, and renewals? If you can just throw some light on that. Thanks.
Yeah. So our view has been that, I mean, if you look at the industry mix in general, don't look at just this last 6 months number because it's kind of not reflective of general industry picture. But if you look at the industry mix, private car would be roughly about 40-45% of the mix. CVs would be again a similar number, maybe 45 plus, and two-wheelers would be about 15% for the industry. For us, CV has been about 15% of our mix. Private car has been roughly about 50-55% of our mix, and two-wheelers has been between 25 to 30% of our mix. Largely because we believe these are more profitable segments based on our experience. Having said that, on the CV side, I kind of touched upon this point earlier also, but what we've been doing over the last two years is that we are doing a lot more work on the micro segmentation of the CV book, and post the new Motor Vehicle Act, there are certain segments that we believe make sense to underwrite. And CV, the big issue is TP, not necessarily the ODPs. So on the TP, if the book is viable, then we would want to write it. So we are gradually increasing our CV book, but very, very selectively. We will not go anywhere near the industry mix. I mean, from 15% we'll maybe move it up a little bit. But our overall view about aggregate CV book remains. While, as I said, with the new Motor Vehicle Act, we believe certain sectors or certain subsegments of CV could become more attractive. So we are gradually looking at increasing our CV exposure very, very marginally.
Got it. Any particular sub-segments which you want to highlight are becoming more?
Yeah, no, we don't want to give any more details because it's competitive information. So those are selection criteria for us.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Deepika Mundra from JP Morgan. Please go ahead.
Hi, sir, and thanks for taking my question. I'm sorry if this is a very basic one, but just on the health side, given the sharp growth that you're seeing in indemnity from a relatively new agency pool, on an overall portfolio level, how are you avoiding adverse risk selection as this segment becomes more meaningful for you?
Look, because that's a great question, but it's not as if we were not writing, CHI from the agency channel in the past. It was just that in the past, since we didn't have the flexibility of repricing, we were a bit cautious, and we also had a constraint before the POS regulation came in terms of adding agency. So both were those are the two constraints which went away around 2015-16, and that's when we started focusing on this segment. I think couple of, if you look at over the last, from 2003-4, the capabilities that we've built in terms of fraud control and network management is there. It's not as if we didn't have the capability. And when we are looking at some of these agents, it's not as if they are new to the industry. They may be, they are maybe existing agents. We are of course adding some new to the industry agents also, but we are also attracting some of the existing agents. Now on the underwriting side, our filters are probably a bit more stringent than most. And when we look at the viability of that portfolio, we don't look at it from a short-term perspective. Our actuarial team and underwriting team do a lot of work in terms of the long-term viability of the portfolio when we underwrite. What I mean by that is, as you know, the initial period, the exposure is less because of the 2-year or 4-year wait period, and then the loss picks up, and you have to study the loss ratio pattern of a cohort over, let's say, 8-10 years to figure out whether the portfolio will be viable over that period. That's how we study it. When we kind of review it together as a team, we study the long-term loss ratio pattern of this book, and we have a lot of tools that we have in terms of selection. So yes, it's something that is very important. It's not not an unimportant question at all. It's a very, very important question that you've asked, but that's something that we focus a lot on.
Okay, and sir, if I can just follow up to that, it just seems that the regulator is leaning towards widening the net in terms of the number of diseases covered and the policies becoming slightly more comprehensive in nature. Do you think all those nitty-gritties are priced in the current pricing framework?
So they allowed, when they when they asked us to increase, they allowed us to also increase price to a small extent. But as we've given in our presentation, we've also have regulatory approval for our retail CHI, flagship CHI product. While there's wider coverage, there's also price revision. We would kind of from November onwards, all new customers we would switch to the new pricing, and for our renewal book we'll switch from January. So the regulator has been I think pretty balanced, and they're sensitive to this issue. Of course, we have to show them data and convince them why we need price increase, but which is, in my opinion, quite fair and reasonable. But if there is a requirement, it's not as if they don't allow price increases.
Okay, and so what would this price increase from November amount to?
That will be roughly about 7-8%, right, Gopal? On a weighted average.
Roughly about on a weighted average basis on the portfolio will be roughly about 7 to 8%, Deepika.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Prateek Poddar from Nippon India Mutual Fund. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. So just wanted to check, is it possible for you to share what were the exit growth rates of benefit-based health products and indemnity products? And second is there been a material change in the distribution mix for the industry / ICICI Lombard post-COVID, or it's the same as it was pre-COVID? And lastly, sir, on the digital initiatives, you did talk about it. I just wanted to understand, with the way you have presented on slide 10, the scale-up of these initiatives, how should we think about expense ratios from a medium-term perspective?
So maybe the first two questions I'll ask Sanjeev to answer. On the last point, honestly, the entire effort for us is, in terms of employee productivity, as also customer convenience and reduction in error rates. Right. So it's not just productivity that we look at. And if you look at over the last 12 years, I mean, it's there in the same slide, our employee productivity has been a 15% CAGR. And if you look at our total headcount today is much less than what we had in 2008, while our policy numbers have grown 8 times roughly. And that's been made possible because of the tech investments that we've made over the years, not just what I talked about in the opening remarks. Going forward, the aspects that we are focusing on is, while for the customer side there is a lot of customer or agency or distributor, we've done a lot of work in terms of digitizing processes and making it convenient. There is still some more work that we could potentially do, in terms of human judgment, which is where the AI/ML solution comes in, which probably eliminates some of the routine work that our doctors do when it comes to, let's say, health claims, but then gives them the ability to do more work on the portfolio analysis, etc. And that's where we should see the benefit. And honestly, when we scale, as we scale, we will not need to add as many people as in line with the business growth. So that's why, if you look at the last 12 years, you see the data that I talked about in terms of policy count versus headcount reduction. In terms of the health pattern, I'll ask Sanjeev to explain.
No, I think you're spot on. Clearly, as we have been always telling in every investor meet, that our health book was more skewed towards the benefit construct vis-a-vis the indemnity, and over last actually couple of years, this kind of has gone through a change. We have a huge bancassurance partnership which works through the NBFC and banks. Since last year, NBFCs have been very restrictive on their disbursements, and in this year, first half of the year also, even banking, while they have recovered, banks have generally recovered to some extent in the quarter two. In quarter one, were fairly subdued. That extent, the contribution of the benefit book has gone through a change in the overall health book. Typically, we've been saying that almost 2/3 of our book used to get driven through benefit on bancassurance tie-ups. However, that has transformed, and indemnity book has increased and has also seen a lot of tailwinds and growth. So there has been a shift. It's not that it was done by design. There has been circumstances by which indemnity has gone up, but we were prepared for both opportunities to be fair. And since we had been investing on the indemnity side, we've been able to grow on that part. And as and when the NBFC/banking sector start disbursing, even on the benefit attachment part, we would see reasonable growth for ourselves, which has been subdued otherwise over the last 18 months.
Sir, if I may interrupt, my question was honestly in the month of September, because I understand there will be sequential recovery. I was just looking at the exit growth rates for the quarter for the benefit base. How's the trend been? And same for indemnity.
Okay. So indemnity, I think we continue to witness decent growth. I covered that when I spoke in the past, and I don't see that changing substantially. And typically, indemnity book has a much better growth for the industry itself in the second half, so we should continue to see that. On benefits side, as I spoke about it, we do believe that it will have a much better, without getting into very much specific details, we would see much better numbers in the second half vis-a-vis what's happened in the first half of the year for sure.
Okay, and sir, question on distribution mix. If has there been any change in the distribution mix post-COVID, or it's the same as pre-COVID for the industry?
So mix can be attributed to the fact that we are doing more indemnity, which is done through agents, telesales, and digital mode, vis-a-vis bancassurance, which was done through banking partner. To that extent, has gone through a bit of a transformation. But is it something by design, by choice? I think some bit of lack of growth in the bancassurance side has impacted that, but it should come back. So we are pretty much invested on both sides.
So I don't think you should. I think the point that Sanjeev is making, don't take the the current numbers and assume that will continue. I think as the NBFCs and the banks come back in terms of disbursement, our mix will again probably go back a bit more in favor of benefit, not to the extent that we had in the past.
No, Bhargav, I just wanted to check for the whole company, not from the health perspective. If honestly, whether website traffic or business has increased for you.
On the website part, clearly.
For the company as a whole, including motor and not only subject to health.
Okay. I understood your question.
Okay. So on the traffic side, on website for the company, yes, we have seen a significant improvement on the health side. On motor as well as two-wheeler, it has remained neutral to positive at this point of time. But clearly, in time to come, the way we've been investing, we may see some growth. But any substantial shift in terms of percentage contribution of website, that's not happened as yet.
Okay, so the online channel still continues to be minuscule or very small as a percentage of our sales, right? It's traditional channels which are still leading the growth.
Yes.
Yeah, in terms of GWP, yes. In terms of policy count may be different, but in terms of GWP, yes.
Yeah, okay, sir. I just wanted to check on this. Thank you so much, sir, and all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll be able to take one last question. We take the last question from the line of Ajox Frederick from B&K Securities. Please go ahead.
Sir, thanks for the opportunity. Again, sorry to harp on this. Motor TP, what's your outlook with respect to claims going forward now that we have almost reached very good numbers on loss ratios? So how should I see it moving forward?
Look, as I explained, you should not look at just the quarterly numbers. You should look at a more longer period because, as I explained, and we've been saying it over most calls, that there would be certain quarters where based on our analysis, there could be some releases in a quarter. What you should watch for is a YTD number, and probably see it over the years, over the full year. Now, in terms of where we are seeing the TP book, I think overall we are reasonably confident about the TP book, also because of the new motor third party act that has come in. We are not as yet kind of making a full benefit out of that, but at least early signs is we think there should be a benefit. How much of that will play through, we will have to wait to see. So overall, I think the TP book looks largely okay as long as we remain careful. But don't go by just a quarter number, because there will be some volatility because of releases in a quarter versus no releases in another quarter.
Understood, sir. Sir, on provisions being released, particularly with respect to investment, so we can see another benefit of close to 50 crores coming in, maybe if markets remain buoyant.
Sorry, maybe Gopal, you want to answer?
Sorry, I didn't get your question correctly. Can you just repeat that?
Yeah, I didn't understand.
The provision reversals we did for this quarter, since markets have been buoyant, so 70 crore of reversal happened. So we had provided of close to 120 crore in 4Q. So the remaining 50 crores, we can see that happening anytime soon.
No, as I had explained, Ajox, I think we do have an investment impairment policy that we get guided by. And in quarter 4 last year, we did provide for that 1.2 billion because clearly we saw significant volatility in the market value of stocks corresponding to the cost that we were holding. And hence, we had to kind of make a provision of 1.2 billion. As I said, insofar as this half year is concerned, obviously we take views on the portfolio of stocks that we hold. And in case if we believe a particular stock has reached a value which we think is appropriate, then we would kind of exit from the stock. And in case if that results into any form of gain, then we would realize the gains. And if at all for some reason, if the call on the stock has been not correct, then to that extent we may book a loss and done away with. So that's how what you see insofar as the P&L is concerned when you're seeing a reversal of provision for impairment, which is what I explained. In this half year, one of the stocks that we had kind of impaired for, during the half year, I think we had a view on the stock, and at this point of time, we have kind of exited from the stock, and the actual realization has been kind of booked for through the P&L.
So kind of to add to what Gopal is saying, if you look at our fair value change account for equity, you will see a increase. That doesn't mean that it will come to the P&L. If we believe a particular stock has reached its pricing potential that we foresee, and we sell it, then only we will look at booking a gain. Otherwise, it will just stay as that fair value change account.
Thank you very much for your explanation, sir.
Thank you very much. We'll take that as the last question. I would now like to hand the conference back to Mr. Bhargav Dasgupta for closing comments.
Thank you, Raymond, and thank you guys. Stay safe, take care of yourself. All the best. Good night.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. On behalf of ICICI Lombard General Insurance, that concludes this conference. Thank you for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. You may now disconnect your lines.